Godsworn completely surprised me. It's a classic, old-school RTS game. And by that I mean it pulls heavily from games like Warcraft 3, Age of Empires and other big names in the genre. It's currently in early access, and by some weird coincidence, just passed its 1-year anniversary as I'm writing this. The developers also recently laid out their plans on the road to version 1.0, and after playing the game, I'm very excited for it. There's also a demo available on Steam if you want to try it out. Godsworn might look old school, but it still manages to innovate in a few smart ways, showing that devs' clear love for the genre, from their early commitment to co-op and single player to some really clever hotkey designs and a streamlined approach to economy. It all adds up to something that feels both nostalgic and fresh. But what's the current state of the game in early access? And is it worth the asking price? Let's find out. Alright, time for some historical context. Godsworn is set in Eastern Europe during the Northern Crusades, specifically in the Baltic region. Crusades' main goal, at least on paper, was to convert the various pagan tribes in the region to Christianity and conquer the land. It was a brutal conflict, ending in the eradication of much of the population and destruction of their culture. It also shaped much of the area as we know it today. I'll leave a link in the description to a short video that gives a solid overview of the conflict and future events. It's an interesting setting, taking heavy inspiration from surviving Baltic mythology and pagan folklore. It's definitely not a historical retelling though. Godsworn blends real-world history with fantasy, with gods walking the earth and mythical creatures roaming the land. It feels refreshing to see a game highlight a region and mythology that usually doesn't get a lot of attention. The art style is also great, clearly inspired by Warcraft 3. The characters and buildings are chunky and cartoony, but still detailed and easily recognizable from a distance. The game's maps are colorful and varied, ranging from lush green forests to frozen wastes. Everything feels designed to be highly readable though, so it's easy to keep track of what's going on, even during big battles. In my opinion, Godsworn does a better job at capturing the look and feel of Warcraft 3 than Blizzard's own remake a few years ago. Animations could use a bit of work though. Attacks often feel weak, especially with some of the larger characters. They just lack a certain punch. Now let's move on to gameplay. Godsworn is a traditional RTS game, with all the stuff you'd expect. Base building, unit grouping, that sort of thing. The build menu is always open, so you can plop down buildings fast. And the default hotkeys like selecting all military units or centering on your base are super helpful. It also has some really nice quality of life stuff. Villagers auto-assign to build anything you place, and you can quickly toss them into production buildings by selecting it and hitting T. It cuts out a lot of the economy micro from other RTS games, and gives you more room to focus on other stuff. Pathing is also excellent. When controlling an army, I never felt like they were doing anything they weren't supposed to do. They're also fairly tanky, so fights can last a while, which I actually liked. The camera can be controlled with WASD by default, and hitting space will center the camera on your hero. Control is the default attack move button, which felt a bit odd to me, but all the keys are rebindable, so it's not a huge deal. What I liked most is how clean and bloat-free the game is. There are 4 resources: wood, food, gold and faith. The first 3 come from production buildings, and faith comes from villagers praying at your shrine, which is also your main base. If your shrine goes down, you lose. So no hiding one building in the corner of the map to prolong the game. There's not a ton of units or buildings either, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Everything seems to have a clear role and can also be upgraded. Also, what type of unit and building you get depends on the hero and faction you pick, which I'll go over next. There are currently 2 factions in Godsworn, the Baltic Tribes and the Order, which represents the Christian Church. The Baltic Tribes focuses on nature, ambushes and mythical units, and their building upgrades affect all buildings at once, which keeps things simple and fast. The Order is all about Crusaders, siege weapons, and divine power, and their building upgrades are applied to individual buildings, making them a bit slower than the tribes in comparison. Your hero choice can completely change how a faction plays though. Take Sole and Menace for example. They're both part of the Baltic tribes, but they play totally differently and have access to different abilities, units, and upgrades. As Sole, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, levels up, she can quickly boost the economy and heal nearby units. She also gets strong frontline infantry and upgrades that make her army more durable overall. Menace, on the other hand, is all about damage and deception. He gets access to powerful offensive abilities and units that are built around raiding and high burst damage. It's the same deal with the Order. Each hero brings a different playstyle, and I think it's a really smart way to design both the heroes and the factions. Right now, I slightly prefer the Order. It's a more traditional RTS faction and gets access to more straightforward units, like heavy knights and catapults in the late game. The Baltic tribes, by comparison, felt a bit more complex. I felt like their units had more active abilities to juggle and lacked long-range siege units to close out games. Let's go over the different game modes next. There are a few ways you can play: campaign, skirmish against AI, and online. The campaign is interesting. In the early access version there are 5 missions available, all focused on the Baltic tribe. The first 2 missions act as a tutorial and an introduction to the characters and the conflict. It's a cool story about rivalries between gods and the intrusion of Christianity into the region. I definitely wanted more when I finished it. The missions themselves are all solid, offering unique challenges and optional objectives. All in all, they took me around 3 hours to finish. The campaign is also fully co-op, which is both a good and a bad thing. Playing with a friend is great, but if you're solo, you're stuck with the AI, which can be a bit hit or miss. The AI usually does its own thing fine, following you around and focusing on the objective, but sometimes it just completely breaks down. It might ignore enemies, get stuck, or just send waves of units to their death for no reason. I wish I could command it using the in-game ping system or something, but right now it seems to ignore those entirely. This is one of the main things I hope they improve on in the future, because I genuinely enjoy the campaign. Skirmish is where I spend most of my time. There are plenty of solid maps, with more being added constantly. There's also a good number of challenge missions, which you can play both solo or with a team. Some focus on wave-based defense, others on sieges and other scenarios. I really enjoyed these. They're tough, replayable, and I hope more get added in the future. The AI in Skirmish feels similar to what you get in the campaign. Sometimes it plays smart, using the right units to counter your army, but other times it just completely freaks out and seems to have no idea what it's doing. Also, I have this sneaking suspicion that the AI cheats. It never seems to run out of resources, and no matter how many times I wipe out its army, there's always another one ready to go. In some of the longer matches, it honestly felt like I was choking a robot to death. There's also competitive multiplayer in the game. There's no matchmaking at the moment, but apparently it's not too difficult to set up a game in the official Discord, if that's what you're looking for. Okay, I have a few criticisms before I wrap up. Like I said, the AI could use some work, especially on the campaign side. Some of the animations feel a bit floaty, like there's almost no weight behind them. But my biggest complaint, and the one I've seen most online, is that there is no save feature when you're playing solo. Some missions and matches can run pretty long, and it's genuinely frustrating to have to start over because of one mistake or, something coming up in real life. It's easily the thing I'd like to see added first. Other than that, it's both a solid early access title and a fantastic RTS game. Price might be steep for what's in there right now, but the foundation is strong and I still recommend it. There's also a demo available, like I mentioned, so you can try it out before buying it. The team clearly has a lot of passion and love for the genre, and if they keep building on this foundation, Godsworn could turn into something really special. So if you're looking for a fresh take on the classic RTS games and a setting that does not get a lot of attention, This one's definitely worth keeping an eye on. And as always, thank you for watching.